Gemaras are, as you know, the Gemara gets into a subject and then it connects different subjects because everything was by heart, Balpeh. So, they mentioned a certain decree the Gemara had mentioned regarding Shabbat. Interesting, this week's parasha is Vayakel. Vayakel opens up with the laws of Shabbat. Vayakel this week, and Parashat Parah also this week. And there was certain gzerot that the rabbis made to protect the Shabbat. For instance, if you have an oil lamp that runs on oil, with a wick and oil, it says you're not allowed to read by that oil lamp on Shabbat. Friday night, right, because maybe the flame will be weak, and you might move the lamp to get the oil more closer to the wick to increase the fire, and that will be a problem of making a fire on Shabbat, which is this week's parasha opens up with Lo Tavaru Eish B'chol Mosvotechem Yom HaShabbat. Says you're not allowed to make a fire on Shabbat. The commentaries ask in this week's parasha, why does the Torah specify you can't make a fire on Shabbat? There are many malachot you can't do on Shabbat, 39 malachot. Why does the Torah focus on not making a fire on Shabbat? One answer is because on Yom Tov, you can cook, you can bake, so you might have made a mistake and thought that Shabbat also. And therefore, so one answer is, therefore we say you can't make a fire. Remember, you can't cook, you can't bake on Shabbat, in contrast to Yom Tov. But that's one of the answers. But the rabbis were concerned to protect that law not to make a fire on Shabbat. If you want to send to the group, Adam, that we're on, thank you very much. Great to see you. That is regarding, but then the Gemara had mentioned that was the Mishnah stated that Zerah was said in the attic of Hananiah ben Cheskia, a great rabbi who went upstairs and he locked himself, so to speak, in the room in his house on a project to figure out how to explain Sefer Yecheskel. There were certain psukim in Yecheskel that the implication seemed to be not in sync with the Torah, contradictory to the Torah. And we know Yecheskel, everything he said was emet, but it was hard for the people to understand what he meant. They could make mistakes, so they were thinking of putting Sefer Yecheskel in Genizah. They were going to hide it, but because of the great work of Hananiah ben Cheskia, he was able to explain it, and therefore it could be out in the open for the people to learn. And while he was there, the rabbis had come to visit him, and the Gemara said that the students of Beit Shammai came and to Beit Hillel came, and they made a vote, and there were more students for Beit Shammai or Beit Hillel, and they made 18 enactments, 18 gzerot at that time period. So there's a lot of chock full of gzerot, and now Gemara is going through those 18 that have nothing to do with, many of them have nothing to do with Shabbat. Meaning, out of the 18, some of them, like we mentioned about Shabbat, but the vast majority had nothing to do with Shabbat. We just listed yesterday, we listed 10 of them that have to do with Tumah, that have to do with contamination, protecting certain laws of contamination. And that is, pretty much, most of them were about, contamination. So now, what was one of the things that we stated on the bottom of 13b, I presume it's 13b4, at the end of the page, we said that Mantana ha'ochel ochel rishon. Now, it's 13b5. 13b5. Who's the one who said if you eat an ochel rishon, v'ochel sheni, if you eat a food that was a rishon or a sheni, which means to say, as we explained yesterday, by the time everybody's finished here, we're going to all become experts, I think, morning in Tumah and Tahara, right? We're going to be ready to for the Beit HaMikdash, right, Adam? And if a person eats a food that's tamei, and as we said, a food that's contaminated does not have power to contaminate a person. A food does not have power to contaminate a person. To contaminate a person, you need to be a source of tumah, an avatumah. But a rishon, a food, how does a food become contaminated? Food does not become contaminated by itself. It's not a source of contamination. It's not the dad. It receives its contamination from something else, right? Now, yes, it is true that a dead animal is a source of contamination. But the food that we're talking about, a food that if we're not talking about, we're talking about a food, a kosher food. So the kosher food that is contaminated has to be something that receives contamination from something else. And that does not have the power to contaminate the person who eats that food or touches that food. But the rabbi said that if you eat this food that's contaminated, whether this food is a rishon, was once removed from the source, meaning it came in direct contact with a source of contamination, or the food did not receive its contamination from the actual source of contamination, it received the contamination from something that received its contamination from the source. That means it's like the grandson. There's the dad, there's the son, which we'll call the Rishon, and the son creates the next son, is the grandson. That's a good mashal, right? To say the Sheni is the grandson, is the Hebrew. The Rishon is the first is the son, and the dad is the Ab. So if you ate the son, so to speak, if you ate the first food, the food that was classified as the first child, the Rishon, or you ate the Sheni, you ate the second, we say, what status now? What do you have? What's your status now that you ate a Rishon or a Sheni? We say you have a status, we're going to give you a status of a Sheni. Of you, the eater, the one who ate this food, will have the status of a Sheni. What does that mean of a second generation? The second generation only has a power to invalidate Truma. If it comes in contact with Truma, it will invalidate. If something, meaning to say, in general, if I have food number one, first generation food, second generation food, which we call the Sheni, has the power to invalidate. If it comes in contact with a third food, it could invalidate that food. If that third food is Truma, if it's Truma, it can invalidate the Truma that you can't eat the Truma. Okay? Now, being that's the case, so by saying that, but that third food, that Truma with the third food, if that touches a fourth food, does not, a fourth Truma, another Truma, it cannot do anything to make a fourth level, doesn't have the power because since it's so far removed from the original source of contamination, it cannot make a VE by Truma. It cannot make a fourth generation by Truma. However, it could invalidate Kachim. It could be a fourth generation. If the fourth item is holy, meaning it's from a korban, from an offering, the third generation Truma has the ability, the power to invalidate a fourth item, if that fourth item is Kadashim, but not Truma. So now the Gemara is going with that backdrop. Now Shlomo, now Yehuda, now it's clear. So now with that backdrop, this state, the fact that you're telling me that whether you ate generation one, Rishon, or what the thing that was contaminated from not the source, but from the source, or food two, your status does not equal the status of the food that you ate. Rather, your status will equal a level 2 status. Who is that opinion? Now, if you're telling me it only invalidates, if you tell me you only have level 2, that means level 2 means you only could invalidate Truma, and you have no power to contaminate Truma. When you say the word contaminate, it means it contaminates it that could knock out something else. It has the power to continue that chain. But the fact that you tell me it only could invalidate the Truma, that means you're telling me it has a status of second generation. Because if you have the same status of what you ate, So if you ate a Rishon, generation number one, if you have the same status, then you would be a Rishon. You would be, and a Rishon can make a Sheni, and a Sheni can make a Shlishi. But the fact that you tell me you only have the status of a second, that you only can invalidate Truma, that means you have a second status, you only have a second generation status, the lowest status. The grandson is not as powerful as the son. It's the grandson. Go to Adam, right? The grandson. You're not the son. Since you're not the son, good morning. So then there's a 6:30 Lamala and 7:30 Lamala. So the Gemara says, Man Tana, Ochel Ocha Rishon, we're on 13b5. If you ate Ocha Rishon, Ochel Ocha Sheni, and if you ate a second generation in Nifsal Pasli, you all right? Okay, no problem. He's going to get the paper towels. But at least wasn't so hot, Mr. David, right? Okay. The coffee was about 15 minutes old. And I had a little milk in it too, so it cooled it off a little bit. So who's the one? Next time we got to get the table a little closer to you, Mr. Habe, I think. We got to bring the table closer. So who is the author of that? Right? But it does not have the power to contaminate. So the Gemara says, now we're on 14a 1. Amar Rabba Bar Chana Rabbi Yeshua. Good morning, Mark.
Morning, Rabbi.
Good to see you. Rabbi Bar Chana says it's Rabbi Yeshua. It's not. We learned in the Mishnah. So we just Mark to bring Mark up to date. We're saying if a person ate level 1, there's the dad. Dad is the father. Level 1 is the son. Level 2 is the grandson. The son comes from the dad. The grandson comes from the son of the dad. So therefore, the grandson is called the Sheni, and the son is Rishon. And we said if a person ate level 1 or level 2 that was contaminated, based on Torah law, you will not become contaminated because a food does not have the power, the ability. Dave, if you want to use it, you could. Food does not have the power to contaminate a person, but the rabbi said that if a person eats the food, he will become contaminated. But we're giving him level 2. The eater has level 2. Whether he ate level 1 contamination or whether he ate a level 1 item that was a level 1 or he ate level 2, he will have a status of level 2. So the Gemara says, who's the author? You got that, Mark? Is that clear?
How could he have? Is my speaker on?
Yeah, your speaker's on.
How could he have the status of level 2 if he ate level 2?
Right, but but that's going to be that's part of the chidush.
And why does he even have any status? Because food can't contaminate a person.
Right. So that's going to be the Gemara is going to explain that. We're getting close to that. Why the rabbis made this enactment. But so we're going to see. Stay tuned. So the Gemara is, but Mark, you're going to see.
And again, this is Rabbanan because the right he can't be.
Right. The right to food that's contaminated cannot make a Rishon, a Sheni. First generation, second generation cannot contaminate a person.
But Rabbanan it can.
It can if you ate it.
Not if you touch it.
Not if you touch it. Right. So
okay,
let's see, and we'll see in a moment. The Gemara says Rabbi Yeshua. Adam, we're now on 14a 1. The Tanan we learned in the Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer Omer. Rabbi Eliezer says, "Ha'ochel ochel rishon." He goes ahead and he says, we're going to give the status of the person who eats it and like the food itself. That's going to be now in general, in usual, let's say on Torah law, on general law, usually when you come in contact with something, you go down a level, right? Because you're not, you have the source, and then the source comes in contact with something that next thing becomes first generation. Good morning, Asaf. And then after that generation touches something else that becomes the second generation, right? So that's the general. But here he says that we're going to give you the status of exactly what of the item that you ate. That is the opinion. We have two people waiting in the waiting room. Let's see if we can get them both in. We give them the status of of um, of exactly what you ate. That is that again. This is a rabbinic law, and the rabbinic law could work with its own has its own rules, and obviously has reasons for it. Good morning,
Ralph.
Ralph. Good to see you, Ralph. Good morning, Emmanuel and Ralph are coming in at the same time. Good morning, Emmanuel. And we're going to give you the same status. So if you ate generation one of contamination, this rabbi holds, you're going to get the same level of contamination you're going to stay the same status of that food. That which would mean if a person ate level one food that was contaminated from a source, so you ate the baby, the child, you will have the same status of that child. So if it's a Rishon, if it was one generation, if it was the first, you would have the status of a Rishon. Yes. Right. So no. Those have different laws, right? Dead body has its own laws. Right. But here it's specific eating. This is specifically to eating.
How do you say the same status? It makes no sense.
Okay, well, we're gonna but that's his that's his opinion. We're gonna that's a separate discussion why he holds this way, and that in the Tosefta Tahirot. By the way, that exactly is what Mark's asking is exactly the question that Rabbi Yeshua says to Rabbi Eliezer. What was his question? Amar Rabbi Yeshua Eliezer. Where do we ever find in the Torah such a thing that you can make the tumah when something is contaminated, makes the next generation just like them? That was exactly Marcus' question that he asked him. That you say that if you ate the first generation, you become the first generation. And remember, if you become the first generation, if you ate the first generation has the power to contaminate truma. If it touches truma, it will contaminate it, and that truma could invalidate a next generation, right? So where do we find that? Was Mark? That was his question to him, and so Mark's in a good. Mark is in a good place. He's asking the good question. But then Rabbi Yeshua answers it himself. But that is part of the discussion. But Mark, you're going to see that there's going to be even a question on Rabbi Yeshua himself. Because Rabbi Yeshua says, if you ate a Rishon, if you ate level one, you become level two, the eater. But if you ate level two, you become level two. So that question is going to be on him also, that he's also giving, in a certain situation, he is giving the same status as the item. So both rabbis would have this situation. Okay. So the Gemara says, here's the Mishnah where we have this disagreement. Rabbi Eliezer says, if you ate food that was level one, it's a child, it became contaminated from the source, it's close to the source, it's the child, the eater becomes a Rishon. If you ate Ochel Sheni, by the way, Mark had a question yesterday. Mark, you remember your question with Truma? Remember your question? Maybe we'll wait for Mark to come in live. We'll discuss it with him. So the Gemara says, Ochel Rishon
I'm back.
Rishon. If you eat ochel rishon, you're rishon. Rabbi Eliezer says you become like the food that you ate. Ochel ochel shenu. You ever heard the expression? You are what you eat. Right? That expression. That's Rabbi Eliezer. You are what you eat. You ate a rishon, Adam. You ate the first generation thing. You will have the same status of that food that you ate. You ate a sheni. You will be a what? The next time you hear that expression, you think of this Gemara, Rabbi Eliezer. Ochel ochel sheni is a sheni. Shlishi, you'll be a shlishi. You ate third generation. Third removed, you will be third removed. Sounds like cousins. First
But
removed.
not first.
What?
But he's holding not first.
But he's holding whatever you ate, you
You
are
are.
what you ate. So if you ate a
So
first generation,
Rev Eliezer is saying all you are what you are, and Rev Yehuda is saying if you ate first, you're second, but if you ate second, you're also second.
correct. Exactly. Good morning, Nathan.
Right.
Welcome back, Nathan. Good to see you. We just lost him. Hopefully he's coming right back. So Rabbi Yeshua says, Ha'ochel ochel
Yeshua.
rishon v'ochel sheni. Rabbi Yeshua says if you ate a rishon and you ate a sheni, you are a sheni. You have a status of a second generation. If you ate a rishon, which is the normal thing, if you usually go down one level, so if you ate level one, you become two. But if you ate level two, he
So
said you'll have to still remain a two. Oh, sheni is sheni. But what about if you ate a shlishi? If you ate a third generation? Now remember, everybody,
there
we
is no
said
fourth
that
generation.
truma ends at 3. Meaning,
Right.
if truma was contaminated, was a third generation truma. It was the third, meaning it's 3 removed from the source. It does not have the power to contaminate other truma. That's a step.
It
But it
doesn't.
does.
Does it make a 3 a 3?
No, a 3. If a 3, we're going to see about eating a 3. But in general, about
Right.
touching, if you
Yeah,
have a
0.
third generation, if it
0.
touches
Yeah,
truma,
that's
which
the
is the
end.
4th generation, it will not do anything to it. However, if it touches kadashim, holy foods, like think part of offerings, it will invalidate the kachim. So now, what is the status of a shlishi? So he says, if you eat a shlishi, you'll get a sheni l'kodesh. If you ate a third, you're actually moving up. You're gonna go from a shlishi
Sheni.
a sheni to it regarding. Good morning, Nathan. If you ate a shlishi, you're going to become a sheni. You're going to become a status of a second generation regarding specifically kadashim. That means regarding holy foods. If you become a sheni, in holy foods, you can make a shlishi, you can make a revi'i, and that's it. That means if you're second generation, if you have a status of second generation, if you touch something, another kadashim, you can make that contaminated, and that if that item that you subsequently touch something else, it can make it a revi, 4th generation, if it touched kadashim. So that's what this rabbi said. Rabbi Yeshua says when it comes to a third generation, if you ate the third generation item that was contaminated, you become a sheni lekodesh. You become sheni to kodesh. The ain sheni letruma. But you're not going to be you. If you ate the third generation, the third 3 removed from the source, you are not going to do anything to truma. If you eat subsequently touch truma, you have no power to do anything of contamination to truma. And the Gemara has to clarify this. There is no such
Good
thing.
morning, sir.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Now, there's no such thing when you deal with regular food, right? Regular chulin food. We call chulin non-holy food. There's no such thing. And Nathan, I don't know if I gave the proper good morning to you, but we're so happy to see you back. But if you ate chulin food, chulin, non-holy food, Ralph, cannot receive contamination if it cannot become if it's a third generation. There's no status of a third generation, when it comes to non-holy food. If I have regular food, I have a piece of bread, my bread could become first generation. I'm not a Kohen, I don't have truma by me. and thy bread could touch other bread, that second bread could become second generation. But that second generation, if that second generation, my bread that touched something that was that touched the sauce, made a second generation, cannot make a third generation, cannot do anything to a third generation. That third thing that's so far removed does not become invalidated at all, has no status of contamination at all. Morning mark. So what do we mean that you ate a third generation? There's no third generation when it comes to non-holy food. When it's not truma, could be third generation. Kadashim could be third generation. So what does it mean? So the Gemara says we're talking about what people used to do is they accepted upon themselves, Kohanim would accept upon themselves the stringency, because since they were always eating truma, they wanted to eat not only their truma in a status of purity, they would eat their chulin, the non-truma, in a status of purity, because that keeps them very in shape. Because if I'm going to start, this type of food I eat not in a status of purity, and that food I eat in a status of purity. So they were careful. The same way you can, as a Kohen, you can't allow your truma to become tameh, right? You're not allowed to contaminate truma. You're not allowed to eat truma that's tameh, right? So the Kohanim, so many Kohanim would accept upon themselves that they're going to eat the chulin. They're gonna watch the food in a way that they watch truma. So therefore, this food that could be, we call it a shlishi, it's third generation. Why does it mean it's third generation? Because they're treating it, there is third generation by truma. That means it's third removed. Non-truma does not have a status of, cannot be a third generation. It's nothing. But we're talking about when he treats this third generation food like truma. So therefore, that's what we mean to say that there's a third generation by non-truma, because you're in your stringency, in your chumrah, it has a status. It's treated like a shlishi, but you're treating your regular food like truma. The same way and therefore, if you're treating it like truma, so it says whatever the laws of truma would be the same laws over here. So therefore, we're saying that's how it could be a shlishi. Now, so the Gemara says, now before the Gemara is going to ask the question, what's the reason for this? Yesterday we had a question. We're talking about level 1, level 2, level 3 contamination, right? There's a source, and then there's the it touches something else. That's the child. That's Rishon, and then that thing touches something else. That's Sheni. So Mark had a question yesterday. What about a basket? You have a basket of figs, and if you touch one fig in the basket, now, and then that fig is touching another fig. How do you look at those figs? Do you look at if you touch one fig? Meaning, let's say we would understand if you have a soup, if you touch one part of the soup, the whole soup has the same status as one item. How do you look at multiple figs in one basket? Do you say that if you touch one fig, that fig, it's like you touch the whole thing, they're all together in the basket, because that fig is touching another fig, and therefore it's considered right. Since it's touching another fig, do we look at it like it's one, or do we look at it it's separate? So the case of, there's a Mishnah in Trumot. I did some research. Mishnah in Trumot in Perek Beis, I think Mishnah Aleph, talks about a gulei dveila, where you have a date cake, and you have all these dates that are connected together. You see that clearly. It's not like a soup that everything is like it's one. There's a date 1, date 2, but they're all together. You made a cake they're attached to each other, and it says it says interesting that if you touch date one, that does not make all the dates. It's not like you touch all the dates, even though they're touching each other.
And it's a cake, okay, in one tin?
So I see, right. So that right. The only thing it's not a perfect proof, but it's not talking. It doesn't say it's in a basket or something, right? It's a loose cake. So so there is. We still didn't see exactly about a basket, but we do see. At least we could address part of your. We do find it. But even though it's touching one, each one is considered separate, because we say if you touch fig number one, which is part of the cake, that becomes contaminated. That becomes level one, and it does not contaminate. Now, only would contaminate the fig next to it, meaning all the figs, right and the left. They become shani, exactly. But yes.
If I have, you all know, every apple
Right.
doesn't touch 2 layers down. It has one all on sides and below it, maybe touches 5 apples. Or
Right.
So those
Oh,
apples
exactly.
would be shitty.
Exactly.
And the 8 apples under those 4 would become.
See, but since if it's not truma, it doesn't have, it won't, those other things have no status at all, no contamination at all, right? Because you see, you can't make a third level if it's not truma or kachim.
Okay.
So therefore, the only things that will be tamei is the adjacent, all those apples that it came with directly in contact with the first apple. If we're going to compare the basket to this cake, that will be the. But I'm saying, but we see that it's not. Yeah, it's not like considered like one entity. We don't look at the cake.
Then one more level down.
But again,
you can't even find that. You can't even figure that.
Yeah, but we're saying the way if our comparison is correct, right? If it's correct that we're comparing to this cake, this cake of dates, and we're saying, and we're going to compare the basket to the date, unless someone says different, unless we see otherwise. So the way we're saying is that if you have a cake made up of many dates, you see the dates, not like a cake that we eat, mush cake. There's date 1, date 2, date 3. So we're saying if you come in contact with date number 1 is called generation 1. The cake that's around it on both sides of that date, whatever that date is touching, is level 2, shani. But everything else in that basket, besides, if it's not truma, everything else is called tahar. And if it is truma, so then only has the power on that it only can make one more level. One more level would mean the first 3 cake, the 3 cakes will be a problem, right? On this side, and 3 cakes on this side, right? No, it's this cake and 2 and 2 will be 2 and 2, right? Right. That would be this cake in the middle, and it could do 2. Right. So whatever that basket, if you have a basket of apples and touching simultaneously multiple things, so it should make all those things that it's simultaneously touching a second level. The rice, it would seem that you would say it's all one entity. You have 100 pieces of rice. You're not going to say each one is separately. You have to say it's full. That 100 pieces of rice becomes one level. It's a level. It's not said each piece of grain of rice doesn't sound like to be a separate level. Okay, just wanted to get back to you on that. Okay, so now the Gemara asks the question that we've been all waiting for. What's the reason for this gzeirah? Meaning, the Torah says that if you eat level 1, morning, good to see you. The Torah says if you eat something that was contaminated, right? If you have a food that was contaminated, a food does not have. You're welcome, Albert. Good to see you. A food that's contaminated does not have the power to contaminate a person. But the rabbi said, if you eat a food that was level 1, that came in contact with something that was with a sauce, that food you become a second level contamination. And whether you ate a level 1 food or level 2 food, you become contaminated. You have a status that you could invalidate truma after eating that. Why did the rabbis do that? What's the reason? My time it goes to Rabbanan, but the rabbis wanted to protect. What was the issue? Zimnan de achal ochel tameim. People, there's no problem. A person wants to eat something that's tamei, right? So a food that came in contact with, technically was touched by something that was a source of contamination. Let's say a dead animal. Dead animal was a source of contamination, right? A nevela. And the nevela came in contact with some food. You might have washed off. You might have washed it, but let's say it's still contaminated. So now that food. Now let's say you want to eat that food. There's no problem. You eating that food. You want to eat it. You can eat that food. But what happens is, if I'm a Kohen, and as a Kohen, I have let's say wine, and I got from Albert, gave me some wine. He separated truma. He gave me a portion of his wine. He had grapes. He pressed the grapes, and then he gave me a percentage of the wine for truma. He gave me truma from the wine. The average truma to the Kohen is 2%. The average guy would give 2%. A guy with a good eye would give 2% is 1/50th. A guy with a good eye gave 1/40th, and a stingy guy gave 1/60th. There are different types of people. Depending on people's generosity is how much people gave. And what happens? The Kohen, I'm a Kohen, I'm not a Kohen, but if I would be a Kohen, I'm drinking the wine of Truma. If I'm drinking wine of Truma, I'm not allowed to contaminate the wine of Truma, right, Adam? You have to keep Truma in a state of purity. And if I'm eating food that's contaminated and it goes into, and I'm drinking, so the food and the drink come into my mouth many times simultaneously. I'm drinking and I put some food in, and I might have some wine in my mouth, and that food, if it's food that's contaminated food, which by itself I have no problem eating contaminated food. It's not a sin to eat contaminated food. And if I would eat this contaminated food together with the truma in my mouth, they might come in contact with each other. And if they come in contact with each other, that's going to make impure the truma that was pure. So how do we protect that? So the rabbi said, how you protect that? If you're going to go ahead and eat the food was contaminated.
Going down.
Right. Before I swallow it. What? Right. Not the wine in the cup. But when I'm eating. No, again, one second. Mark, remember, food could contaminate wine, right? Food contaminate other wine, but the food contaminate food contaminate liquids contaminate food, but food cannot contaminate me. Food does not have the power to really knock out a person. To make a person contaminated, you need a source of contamination. It has to be a dad has to, meaning the original source, a high level has to, in order to contaminate a person. A person, right. But here the rabbi said, if I will eat this food, which on a Torah level, it will do nothing to me, this non-pure food, this tummy food, it's not that it's not kosher, just that it was contaminated. This food will not do anything to me, but rabbinically, the rabbi said, if I eat this food, if I will handle truma, after I eat this food, if I will go ahead and touch truma, I will now invalidate the truma. If I eat this contaminated food, I will invalidate truma. So that, you know what that's going to do for me? Now that the rabbi said that, I'm going to be very careful not to have this food and the truma coming in at the same time. Because I know, because first of all, and now I know I'm not allowed to eat truma. I'm not letting it touch truma. I eat tuma, right?
Or is it the same?
No. So the only concern, what is the concern? That I'm gonna- I contaminated wine. That in itself is a problem. I mean, there's a biblical problem. There's a Torah problem. The Torah problem is to take food that's tameh and come in contact with truma, which is pure. That's a Torah issue. For them to hit each other, it's a Torah issue. Right? If I have food that's contaminated and I have wine of truma, if they come in contact, now I've contaminated the wine of truma. That's no. Even touching wine on a Torah. On a Torah level of tummy, it's just no problem. Torah level, if I eat tuma, no problem. There's no issue if I eat the tuma, thing that's contaminated. But the issue is, how do we protect that I'm not going to violate the Torah law of making, of contaminating, of having something that's contaminated come in contact with pure truma. How do I protect that? Yes.
Problem that it gets contaminated?
Is what a problem? Is what? Torah level. Right.
Problem that it gets contaminated, or it's a problem that's contaminated and you consumed it.
Level, first thing, it comes contaminated.
You do nothing.
Right. You just taking truma that's pure and touching something that's contaminated, that's the problem. Therefore, we want to protect. Yes.
Shot, yeah.
Right. Meaning like truma or kachim. Right. And therefore, now that you tell me if I eat something that's tameh, if I am not allowed to touch truma, right? You're going to make me, I would invalidate truma if I subsequently touch it. So that's going to definitely protect me. I'm not going to have them in my mouth at the same time. I know to be careful as a result of that. Okay, to be continued tomorrow. Albert, you walked in on a very tough tomorrow. Heavy stuff. Yeah. Some a little bit more challenging. This is like heavy stuff. But you know what? The more you hear, everything makes a dent. You know what I mean? Okay. Have a great day, everybody. It's like the person walks into a calculus class. You know what I mean? They'll have to. But eventually, have a great day, Ralph. Good to see you.
Thank you. You too.
Take care,
Bye-bye.
Seth. All the best.
Hold on.